October 1944. The Pacific Ocean was about to witness a clash of titans so cataclysmic, so mathematically immense, that humanity had never seen anything like it before, and will likely never see it again. Spanning over 100,000 square miles of open sea, involving nearly 300 massive warships and 200,000 sailors. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was the ultimate final showdown between the United States Navy and the Imperial Japanese Navy, 6 months after the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. The United States had systematically fought its way across the Pacific, utilizing a relentless strategy of island hopping that brought the American war machine directly to Japan's inner defensive perimeter. General Douglas MacArthur had just stepped onto the beaches of Leyte Island, declaring his famous vow fulfilled, "I have returned." But to secure the Philippines, the U.S. Navy had to protect the massive, vulnerable invasion fleet floating in the Gulf. The Japanese High Command knew that if they lost the Philippines, their empire would be severed from its vital oil supplies in the South Seas, effectively ending the war. In a desperate, final gamble, Tokyo activated Operation Sho-One, mobilizing every remaining operational warship, carrier, battleship, and cruiser in the Imperial inventory. They designed a lethal, multi-pronged trap to annihilate the American forces. But the United States Navy was no longer the bruised fleet of 1941. It had grown into an unstoppable, technologically dominant global armada that was ready to completely obliterate the Imperial Japanese Navy once and for all. The Japanese operational blueprint was a masterpiece of tactical deception, born out of sheer desperation. Recognizing that they no longer possessed enough experienced pilots or aircraft to defeat the American fleet in a straightforward carrier battle, Vice Admiral Gisaburo Ozawa volunteered his northern force as a sacrificial decoy. Ozawa's fleet, built around Japan's remaining aircraft carriers, including the legendary Zuikaku, was sent to sail from Japan directly toward the northern Philippines. Their sole mission was to act as bait, deliberately exposing themselves to draw Admiral William Bull Halsey's incredibly powerful U.S. Third Fleet away from the Leyte Gulf invasion beaches. While Halsey was pulled north, 2 massive Japanese surface strike groups would converge on the unprotected American landing ships from the south and the west. The primary punch belonged to Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's Center Force, a terrifying armada featuring the world's largest battleships, the Yamato and the Musashi, packing massive 18-inch guns capable of obliterating targets miles beyond the horizon. Kurita was to transit the Sibuyan Sea and break out through the San Bernardino Strait. Simultaneously, Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura's southern force would advance through the Surigao Strait from the south. It was a synchronized jaws of death strategy designed to catch the American landing forces in a catastrophic crossfire. The illusion of Japanese surprise shattered almost instantly on October 23rd. Deep within the treacherous waters of the Palawan Passage, 2 American submarines, the USS Darter and the USS Dace, were patrolling the dark waters when their radar screens suddenly lit up with massive contacts. It was Kurita's center force, steaming in tight formation. The American submarine commanders did not hesitate, creeping into firing positions in the dead of night. They unleashed a devastating spread of torpedoes directly into the heart of the Japanese column. Within minutes, Explosions ripped through the darkness. The heavy cruiser Maya disintegrated under a volley of torpedoes. The heavy cruiser Takao was severely crippled, forced to turn back. Most humiliatingly for the Imperial Navy, Kurita's own flagship, the massive heavy cruiser was struck by 4 torpedoes and sank in less than 20 minutes, forcing the Japanese admiral to tread water in the open ocean until he could be rescued by a destroyer, before the surface fleets even caught sight of one another. American undersea supremacy had already eliminated 3 crucial Japanese heavy cruisers and stripped the Imperial fleet of the element of surprise. The United States Navy now knew exactly where the monster was heading. The following morning, October 24th, the battle escalated into an all-out aerial slaughter in the Battle of the Sibuyan Sea. Admiral Halsey launched waves of American carrier-based Helldivers, Avengers, and Hellcats from the Third Fleet to intercept Kurita's advancing surface ships. The Americans concentrated their absolute fury on the crown jewel of Japanese naval engineering, the super-battleship Musashi. Spanning over 800 feet long and armored in massive steel plates, the Musashi was thought to be completely unsinkable. Wave after wave of American pilots plunged through a wall of intense anti-aircraft fire, relentlessly hammering the giant vessel. For hours, American aviators executed a flawless, textbook display of coordinated torpedo and dive bombing attacks. The Musashi took 19 torpedo impacts and nearly 20 direct bomb strikes, her internal compartments flooding with thousands of tons of seawater. Her speed dropped to a crawl, her bows dipping dangerously below the waves until the mechanical marvel finally rolled over and capsized, taking half of her 2,000-man crew to the bottom of the ocean. Under the relentless weight of American air power, Kurita ordered his surviving ships to reverse course to the west, leading American scouts to report that the center force was retreating. While the center force seemed beaten, Japanese land-based aircraft launched a fierce counterstrike against the American ships protecting the Gulf. Through a gap in the combat air patrol, a single Japanese bomber plunged from the clouds and dropped a bomb directly through the flight deck of the light carrier, USS Princeton. The blast ignited a catastrophic chain reaction among the fueled and armed planes parked in the hangar bay. Inferno engulfed the ship, and despite desperate firefighting efforts by nearby vessels, a massive secondary explosion ripped the Princeton apart, forcing the U.S. Navy to scuttle her. But while the Americans mourned the Princeton, Admiral Halsey received reports that the Japanese decoy fleet Admiral Ozawa's Northern Force carriers had finally been spotted to the northeast. Believing that Kurita's center force was completely incapacitated and retreating, Halsey made a controversial, aggressive, tactical decision. He ordered the entire U.S. Third Fleet, including all of his fast carriers and powerful battleships, to steam north to hunt down and destroy the Japanese carriers. In doing so, Halsey left the vital San Bernardino Strait completely unguarded, assuming that the American Seventh Fleet to the south would cover any remaining threats. The Japanese trap had successfully sprung open, leaving the northern flank of the American invasion forces utterly exposed. As the night of October 24th deepened, the second jaw of the Japanese trap advanced steadily toward the Surigao Strait. Vice Admiral Nishimura's Southern Force, led by the old but heavily armored battleships Yamashiro and Fuso, moved through the pitch-black waters. completely unaware that they were sailing directly into a meticulously prepared tactical execution wall. Waiting for them at the exit of the strait was Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf of the U.S. 7th Fleet. Oldendorf possessed a formidable line of 6 American battleships, 5 of which had been damaged or sunk at Pearl Harbor and miraculously resurrected to fight again. Alongside them stood a wall of cruisers and dozens of destroyers and PT boats. Oldendorf deployed his fleet in the ultimate textbook naval maneuver, crossing the enemy's T. The American battleships formed a horizontal line across the top of the strait, while the Japanese were forced to advance in a straight, narrow, vertical line, allowing every single American gun to fire a full broadside, while the Japanese could only use their forward turrets. Before the Japanese battleships could even see the American line, U.S. Navy destroyers launched stealthy, high-speed torpedo runs from both flanks of the dark strait. The darkness erupted in lines of fire. The battleship Fuso took lethal torpedo hits, breaking completely in half and lighting up the night sky in a brilliant explosion before sinking. 3 Japanese destroyers were rapidly blown apart by the torpedo attacks. Still, Nishimura stubbornly pressed forward in his flagship, the Yamashiro, sailing directly into the killing zone of the American battle line. At a range of 16,000 yards, the American battleships opened fire simultaneously with their massive 14 and 16-inch main batteries. The sky turned bright red as radar-guided American shells rained down with terrifying pinpoint precision. The Yamashiro was hit repeatedly, transformed into a burning inferno under a relentless hail of steel before finally capsizing. The remaining Japanese ships turned in a desperate retreat, only to be chased down by American cruisers. The Battle of Surigao Strait was a complete, decisive, marking the last time in human history that battleships would ever cross the T and trade broadsides at sea. But as dawn broke on October 25th, the euphoria of the victory at Surigao Strait turned to absolute panic. Vice Admiral Kurita's center force had not retreated. They had turned around under the cover of darkness, transited the unguarded San Bernardino Strait, and were now steaming south along the coast of Samar, directly toward the unprotected American landing craft. Faced against Kurita's massive armada of 4 battleships, including the giant Yamato and 6 heavy cruisers, was a tiny, completely outmatched American task unit codenamed Taffy 3, commanded by Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague. Taffy 3 consisted of just 6 small, unarmored escort carriers and a screen of merely 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts. These small ships, mockingly called jeep carriers and tin cans, carried no heavy armor and were armed with nothing more than small 5-inch guns. To the Japanese, it looked like an easy slaughter. The massive 18-inch shells of the Yamato began splashing around the American ships, kicking up colorful geysers of water. Faced with total destruction, the men of Taffy 3 chose to fight with an aggressive, legendary ferocity that stunned the Japanese commanders. Admiral Sprague ordered his escort carriers to launch every single available aircraft, while his few destroyers received the ultimate command: form a screen and attack the enemy heavy ships. The destroyer, USS Johnston, commanded by Ernest Evans, charged out of the smokescreen alone, sailing directly toward the line of massive Japanese heavy cruisers. firing her 5-inch guns and launching a spread of torpedoes that blew the bow off a Japanese heavy cruiser. The destroyers USS Hull and USS Herman, alongside the destroyer escort Samuel B. Roberts, followed in a suicidal charge, weaving through splashes of giant shells to launch torpedoes at close range. American pilots, running out of bombs and torpedoes, repeatedly flew dummy runs, diving directly at the bridges of Japanese warships just to distract them and throw off their gunnery. The chaotic, hyper-aggressive defense by Taffy III completely baffled Vice Admiral Kurita, because the small American destroyers fought with such relentless fury, and because the American planes attacked from every angle. Kurita mistakenly believed he was engaging the full force of Halsey's heavy, fast fleet carriers. The heavy armor-piercing shells fired by the Japanese battleships passed straight through the unarmored hulls of the American escort carriers without exploding, allowing the small ships to stay afloat and keep fighting. Though the Johnston, the Hull, and the Samuel B. Roberts were eventually battered to pieces and sunk with heavy loss of life, their sacrifice bought vital time. Confused by his own lack of situational awareness, suffering from poor communication, and terrified of being trapped by imaginary American reinforcements, Kurita made the shocking decision to break off the engagement. He ordered his formidable fleet to reverse course and retreat back through the San Bernardino Strait, abandoning his mission to destroy the landing ships. The thin tin cans of Taffy III had successfully turned back the most powerful surface fleet Japan could assemble, far to the north. Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet finally caught up with Vice Admiral Ozawa's decoy carrier force in the battle off Cape Ingago, unleashing an unstoppable wave of hundreds of carrier aircraft. The American pilots swept over the virtually defenseless Japanese ships, which had almost no planes left to protect them. The American dive bombers and torpedo planes systematically hammered the Japanese fleet, sinking all 4 aircraft carriers, including the Zuikakata, last surviving carrier that had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Ozawa's sacrificial mission was fully accomplished, but at the cost of the complete and total destruction of Japan's carrier capability. By October 26th, the multi-pronged Japanese offensive was utterly broken and scattered across the ocean. The United States Navy had achieved a victory of unparalleled proportions. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was the definitive death knell for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Japan had lost 26 major warships, including 4 aircraft carriers, 3 battleships, and 10 cruisers. Casualties so severe that the Imperial fleet was effectively eliminated as a strategic fighting force for the remainder of World War II. Their ships were stranded in port for the rest of the war, starved of fuel and stripped of their weapons. The United States Navy emerged from the colossal clash in absolute, undisputed command of both the sea and the air across the entire Pacific theater. The path to the Japanese home islands was now wide open, proving to the world that the industrial might, technological supremacy, and tactical brilliance of the United States Navy was an unstoppable force capable of total global dominance.